Pat. Welcome to Evansville Podcast. The nerds you're looking for podcast. It's like double podcast episode. Always like those. How long have you guys been doing the podcast?
It'll be 4 years in November, so we've been doing it for a while, yeah.
Wow, 4 years snuck up. I didn't realize
I
it was
know,
that long.
right?
Yeah.
What are we on, like 154 this Monday? Well, I get whenever this airs, I'm not sure. We might be higher.
So you're around there, and 150 plus.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we were bi-weekly for a while.
Okay.
And then we just, within the last couple of years, went weekly, so.
You know, I think you guys beat me by a month then, because I started in, you guys 2013 then, right? So I was December 2013.
Oh, yeah,
was when I started, so.
Yeah, we were November. I think, what was the first review we did? Ender's Game?
No, it was Ender's Game, and that was the one that we lost the audio.
Oh, nice.
So I think it turned out to be Thor the Dark World, right?
Yeah, that was our first review.
November 2013, yeah.
Dang, so, man, now I feel bad that you guys are longer than me. So what is it about podcasting, I guess, then, that when did you guys get into it? What made you guys think, let's do a podcast?
That's a loaded question, right?
All
so,
right,
I mean, I was a huge podcast fan for a few years going into us starting. I know that this is probably a pretty common answer with a lot of podcasters, but Kevin Smith was a huge influencer on me on wanting to get into it. All of his podcasts are hilarious, and I was listening to them quite religiously. And then Pat and I had kind of thrown it off each other a little bit, and a friend of Pat's had started a podcast, and I think that we both kind of looked at each other and were like, well, we can do this too. Why not? Right. So that's kind of my attitude that was going into it. I don't know if you have anything you wanted to add.
Yeah, I was actually a guest on that podcast. They do a lot of, they're an indie-based podcast called The Obsessive Viewer, and they do a lot of TV and movie reviews like we do. And they had a zombie episode that was just the zombie genre as far as Night of the Living Dead and so on and so forth. And I'm a big fan of the genre. So they had me on as a guest, and I was like, oh, well, this is kind of cool. I'd never been on a podcast before. Obviously, I'd listened to a bunch of them, but I'd never been on there before. And from then on, every time I listened to one of their episodes, I was like, man, I wish I was on this episode. I wish I could say this and put in my 2 cents. And I was just like, well, why don't I just do that?
Wait a minute.
Yeah, and Tyler and I had been friends for a while, and we kind of kicked around the idea of doing something creative. Like, I know that Tyler had a blog for a while that I was supposed to contribute to that I never got around to doing.
Yeah.
And so we dropped that, and then we kind of briefly discussed maybe writing a comic book. Like, we knew we wanted to do something creative together. And then we both just decided after I had been on that episode, I was like, we should just start a podcast. And we didn't know anything about it.
Sure.
And so we basically, my buddy Matt Hurt from The Obsessive Viewer, he was kind of our producer for a while.
Okay,
because anytime I had any questions or we had any questions about anything with the podcast, he would be right there to answer it. So it was kind of cool. I mean, we didn't have to be alone trying to figure out all this stuff, because there's a lot of stuff that, as you probably already know, that you just don't know going in that is going to happen. And so we had a lot of problems the first, I would say, 15, 20 episodes. And
30,
was always
40, 50.
Right?
We always tell
149 right now, sweet spot.
Yeah, so we always tell people don't listen to the first like 15, 20 because we're super awkward and we're just trying to get our feet wet a little bit. But once we kind of hit the ground running, I think once we went to weekly, it was just like we just really found our footing.
Okay. So, is it, they say like the first 10, 15 usually you're going to suck.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, no.
Which I
we were
totally
so
agree.
awkward.
I apologize to the people I talked to at the beginning.
No,
it's not good.
I would say we were overthinking it quite a bit when we first got started. We were over editing and just really in our heads about it. And then I think whenever you and I both kind of said screw it and we stopped editing out so much and just made it more of a conversation is whenever we kind of found our
be a little
pace.
more real, authentic, that kind of thing.
And one thing, I get this question occasionally is like, well, people are thinking of starting a podcast and like, what's the big thing? You've been doing it for a while. What's the big thing? And I was like, find your voice. Like, find something that you're passionate about, of course. But I think one thing that we were afraid to do at the beginning is we're reviewing TV and movies and we're just saying the same thing that everybody else is saying about that TV or that movie. And I think we really started to find our stride when we didn't care and we just said what we thought of the movie and the TV.
Gotcha.
And so we were a lot more comfortable and had more confidence that we knew what we were talking about and that people valued what we were having to say. So I think that's the biggest piece of advice I could give somebody is if you're going to start a podcast, don't be afraid to speak your mind, because that's why people are going to come. Then they can find reviews of anything that we do in 100 other places.
Right.
They come to listen to us because they want to find out what we thought of it.
Yeah. They're like you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
You can talk about whatever
at
this
for sure.
point probably and still get your people.
For sure.
Yeah.
And that's a nice thing to have. It's not something we take for granted because it took us a while to build that audience.
For sure.
So I saw something about you guys went to a convention recently, and
Yes.
one of you maybe lost a bet or something.
Yes, I did. So we do this thing every year. We started a couple of years ago where we have a Rotten Tomatoes film draft. If you're not familiar with Rotten Tomatoes, it's a website where critics will submit reviews of movies and TV. And if it's a positive review, then it's a fresh review. And each movie and TV has a fresh rating or a rotten rating. So it's a percentage. And we will pick films at the beginning of the year that are kind of nerdy, that our audience will watch, or something that we'll review when it comes out. And we draft them. And whoever has the best percentage at the end of the year makes the other person do something embarrassing.
Sure.
And I lost the first year that we did it. So last year was the first year that we did it. And so we went to Indie PopCon, which is a convention that's really, really fun in Indianapolis. We go every year. And so this was the first year that I actually had to do something to settle the bet. And that was I cosplayed as Slave Leia for a day at Indie PopCon.
It wasn't even a day. It was like you got away with like 3 or 4 hours.
Because you know you're going to lose this year, and you were fine with me. Like, can I just go to the hotel room and change? And you're like, yeah, that's fine.
I was very lenient with the rules because I am losing pretty bad this year, and there will be something embarrassing I have to do next year. So I gave him a lot of creative control over his punishment.
Yeah. So
in hopes that it will be reciprocated.
I was actually, I don't, excited might not be the right word for it, but I was like, well, it'll kind of, because there's so many booths at Indie PopCon, and of course we're trying to draw people to our booth and get more people to listen to the podcast. And I was like, well, at the very least, it will be something that will make us stand out and draw people to the booth. But I think it actually had the opposite effect. I think people tried to get past our booth as quickly as possible. I got snickered at by several high school girls, and it was like I was in high school all over again.
Dang, I thought we were past this.
Yeah, exactly.
Come on.
But in all fairness, I mean, you were in your head about it quite a lot because kids, we have candy at our booth. So kids would come up with the candy, and we'd usually make conversation with their parents, trying to get them to listen to the podcast. And for whatever reason, I'm not sure why, Pat wearing a Slave Leia bikini, he didn't want to give candy to children. And I don't know where that came from, but it was kind of like the Tyler show at the booth that day because he didn't want to talk to anybody in his current outfit.
Yeah, it was a little awkward.
That might be frowned upon. So has being in the podcast, has that helped you like in your everyday life? Or has it changed anything about you guys just from doing this for the last 4 years?
I mean, I'll jump in. For sure with me, I am kind of introverted in my personal life. And, we just recently talked on the most recent episode. I got a promotion at work and I'll be moving soon. And I credit the podcast to interviewing skills. So just being able to talk and tell stories and be comfortable in my own skin, I credit a lot of that to the podcast, just kind of getting past some of the introverted tendencies I had. So yeah, I for sure credit that to the podcast and talking to Pat every day about things we like. So
yeah, and I'd second that. I would also add that I was always kind of nervous about starting a podcast. Like it was something that I was interested in for a long time, and then I finally we decided to do it one day, and we did it, and we were awkward at first, but I mean we found out that we liked it and we were good at it, and so I started to think of other things. What have I done, or what have I not done that I've always wanted to do? And stand-up comedy was one thing that I had always wanted to do, and so I started doing that because of the podcast. Like I don't think I would have ever started doing that if it wasn't the confidence that I got from doing the podcast. So it's definitely opened doors for me. I'm much more confident. Like I said, you have to find your voice and you have to have confidence that what you're saying actually matters. And so just in that aspect, I feel like I've grown a lot as a person because I just have a lot more confidence. I'm also doing not just the podcast, but YouTube, stand-up comedy. I'm doing all these things that I've always wanted to do. I just never had the confidence to do it until we got our feet wet with the podcast and decided that we were good at this thing and people obviously like listening to us because they come every week. So
Yeah.
that definitely helps a lot.
Cool. So you mentioned YouTube. Now, do you both do the YouTube, or is it just Pat?
It's supposed to be both of us.
Oh, okay.
But it's mostly just
This is a
me.
touchy subject. I don't want to.
No, it's fine. It's just my job allows me to do more because I know I'm going to get off at this time. And
Gotcha.
my job isn't very satisfying, but it's one of those jobs that I get paid pretty well. And when I clock off, I don't take it home with me at all. And his job is a lot more like an actual career. So,
It's like a real grown-up.
Yeah. So he actually has to take stuff home with him, and his job is a little bit more stressful than mine. So he doesn't have quite the free time that I do to do other stuff other than the podcast. But yeah, it's under the banner of the Nerd You're Looking For. So if you wanted to go on YouTube, just search for the Nerd You're Looking For, and that's our channel. But for the most part, it's just me.
So how hard is it compared to? I mean, podcasting. You don't necessarily. Most of it's audio, just audio only. Your guys' audio, but then you're on a camera, you Facebook Live, and you're YouTube. And I mean, how much harder is that?
It's a little bit more harder. I mean, we'd been doing the podcast for so long before we started doing all of that other stuff. So I found that I think I probably had an easier transition to it than most people just starting the YouTube.
Sure.
Because I was used to talking. But it's different when the first couple of, probably more than that, but when I would watch me doing the YouTube stuff, filming I'm just really monotone. Like my facial expression is just, I'm just talking. And that's just because you don't see me talking and on the podcast. So I had to really work on being much more animated with my face because I was still saying the stuff that I think is interesting,
Right.
But it was just because I wasn't used to being on camera that certainly was a transition for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't done any of the stuff that Pat's done. I haven't done the YouTube. I think maybe when we first got it, there might be a couple videos if you go way, way far back. But I know watching your Facebook Lives, like your new comic book day videos you do every Wednesday, I could tell that after a couple, you kind of found your footing a little bit and you were less creepy.
You don't look like a serial killer.
Yeah. So, no, I think you found your footing with that.
For sure.
So you mentioned moving. But are you guys both from Evansville, or neither? Maybe.
I am born and raised.
Okay.
I moved around a lot. I just went to USI, and I just kind of stayed. I met my wife, and we've just lived here ever since.
Okay. So, a couple of questions I usually like to ask for people that are in Evansville is like, one is, what is a hidden gem in Evansville that you think people should know about?
Let's see. You want me to go first? I'm assuming.
For sure.
I don't know that it's necessarily a hidden gem anymore because it got a lot of publicity when it opened, but I think that not enough people maybe are supporting it, and that's Secret Headquarters on the north side. Yeah. And, being from Evansville, you constantly hear people say, oh, there's nothing to do in Evansville. There's nothing to do in Evansville. And I appreciate what this podcast, it seems like what you guys do is showing all the things that there are to do in Evansville. And,
it's exhausting.
Yeah. Well, but having a place like Secret Headquarters, like, just having an arcade that you can go to is awesome. And if not enough people support that, then we're not going to get cool things like that around the city. So I think that that's a step in the right direction, especially from a nerdy perspective, that it's cool to have that comic book toy arcade shop, and we should be supporting it so that we can get cooler things like that in the city.
Right.
Well, I was going to go with Secret Headquarters.
So obviously we both love it.
Yeah.
You can.
Well, I mean, I agree with what you said.
You can just say it, and I can cut out whichever one I like or don't like.
So, going back to stand-up comedy, there is not a ton in Evansville, but just keep an eye out for, they do a monthly show at someplace else downtown. That's really fun. They do a monthly show at Boca. That's really, really fun. I really enjoy that venue quite a lot. So just pay attention to that. There's plenty to do in Evansville if you're willing to pay attention to it. Also, I'm a fat kid at heart, and I love pizza, and Rounders on Mill is just delicious. It's the best pizza in Evansville.
Well, we'll see. We have a pizza quest going on. So.
Yeah, I know, but for me, I've already done the quest.
Your quest is over.
Spoiler alert: Rounders wins.
Sorry, we'll bleep that out. Yeah, and then Oh, what is something that Evansville needs?
Oh, wow.
That's kind of a loaded question.
I mean, yeah, that you could take that however you want. Doesn't necessarily have to be a.
Yeah, I figured
place or
there's a
something.
lot of different scopes you could take. You could take with that. You could, probably go the economic route. I think I'm gonna stick with kind of the nerdier route and the kid at heart route, and do something a lot lower scope, but something that I would have liked to have seen here, being from here, and that's a better laser tag option.
Oh.
And that's a weird thing to throw out there. I think that you have two places in Evansville you can play laser tag: Gaddytown and Walthers.
Oh, yeah.
And I didn't even know Gaddytown
I
had
didn't
it
either. I
until
was
recently.
yeah.
My wife went there for her nephew's birthday and said that they played laser tag, and I was bummed I didn't get to go. But I know Pat and I both like laser tag a lot, and we both like beating young children at it
Sure,
whenever
yeah.
we play.
We crush them.
Obviously, because we're grown men. But
Right.
I think that that's just something fun that I enjoy. I'm surprised that there's not an opportunity to do that around the city. And again, I could have gone the more mature route, but I decided
no,
to stick
we don't
to
want that.
Yeah, exactly.
What is that?
So I know we had one, but a comedy club would be awesome in Evansville. I don't know if we necessarily could sustain it, so I understand why people are kind of hesitant to open one. I would say that even though we do have several movie theaters in Evansville, they just play the same movies over and over again. And a lot of these indie movies that Tyler and I want to see really bad, it's really tough for us to see it. So I would kind of want to see a smaller theater that would play some more of these indie movies.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, look at The Big Sick. That's one of our favorite movies of the year, and it played here, but it was like a week. And
Yeah.
luckily, we saw it within that week. But if I'm seeing advertisements for it right now, and if I wanted to go see that,
Right.
there's no an opportunity to watch it in Evansville anymore. So that's kind
Gotcha.
of disappointing.
For sure.
It's interesting. So you guys cover a lot of things on your show.
Yep.
Is there too much content at this point? Do we have too much nerd culture content stuff going on?
I mean, I don't think there's such thing as too much, but I think that you definitely have to have your focus. Like we have our focus is video games, comic books, movies, TV shows. But if we were into anime or cosplaying or like these, or Twitch or whatever, like these huge things that we see at these conventions that we go to, then our podcast would just be too bloated because there'd be
Sure.
almost too much to talk about and too many segments. And I think that we found what we like, but the nice thing about nerd culture is there's so much to choose from that, you can identify yourself as a nerd in a million different ways because there's a million different things to be into.
Sure, yeah.
Yeah, for sure. We've had that discussion before, maybe trimming it down a little bit, but like Tyler said, we love comic books, we love video games, we love TV and movies. So we want to talk about all of that stuff. So I think, like Tyler said, there's so much in nerd culture that we're not even scratching the surface sometimes. So,
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we do talk about a lot in an hour and a half episode, but that's the stuff that we love, and it's our podcast. So it's
Right,
like
yeah.
we're going to talk about the stuff that we want, but
Yeah.
we're not into anime. That's just, there's nothing wrong with it. It's just that it's nothing that either one of us ever got into. So if we started trying to make an anime segment, it would just sound phony because we
Right.
wouldn't know what we were talking about.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's what's great about nerd culture is that we go to these conventions and we see all these different cosplayers, and if we can't pick them out who they are, then that's a pretty deep cut. And there's a lot of times where we can't because there's so much, especially with anime. Like I said, we neither one of us are really into that, so it's pretty easy to fool us there. But yeah, it's just so expansive that we just can't touch on everything.
Yeah. You guys had any controversy or controversial opinions on something that sticks out maybe?
I would think the first thing that would come to my head was the fact that we really both liked the Ghostbusters trailer.
Yeah.
The rebooted Ghostbusters trailer. Like one thing that I kind of going back to what I said at the beginning was that we found our voice. We weren't afraid to say what we wanted to say, give our own opinions. And we barely pay attention to what other people are saying. Like, cause I don't want that to seep in. Like we don't read any reviews going into a movie that we're going to review, cause we don't want to have any of that seep into us. And so with the Ghostbusters trailer, when it got released, everybody was just trashing it. They were saying how horrible it was. That movie was going to be garbage. And we both kind of came up with the same thing, was we actually kind of liked it. We thought it was pretty funny, and we weren't paying any attention to what anybody else said. So we actually came out with that episode talking about the trailer, and both, oh man, this was awesome. This looks really funny. And then we had somebody like, what are you guys talking about? That was awful.
Right.
And then we started looking at it. That the next week we said we had to mention it because it was such a big, like
fun.
everybody hated it
Right.
and we loved it. And we basically, I think exactly what I said was, we're not going to apologize for liking something. Like, you guys listen to us because
Right.
you like what we have to say. So we're not going to stop saying those things.
Gotcha.
So that would be the first thing that came to my head. I know that we've liked certain movies that aren't doing well with other critics, but we like the fact that we go into things as nerds. Like the TMNT movies, the most recent ones, I didn't think they were that bad, but I'm a huge TMNT fan. So of course I was biased, but a lot of movie critics aren't TMNT fans.
Yeah.
So yeah, they trashed it because they're not perfect movies by any means, but I thought that they had the same heart as the original cartoon that I fell in love with as a kid. So yeah, we sometimes don't always agree with everybody else as far as the movies are concerned.
Yeah, I would definitely say that that's probably where we stick out, is that our ratings don't always align with what everybody else seems to be rating things. For me, that's something that sticks out to me, and my tone changes over time. But like last year specifically, I was a big forgiver of the DC movies. So like Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad. And part of it was just because Pat was right, and I don't like when Pat's right. So I had
garbage.
Yeah, so I had to go on the podcast and review them, and I believe I gave both of them somewhat favorable reviews. And we're over a year removed from those movies, and I've kind of seen that those aren't the best films. I still hold out hope for the future ones, but I think that one might be one of the more, controversy is not a big word for such a little thing, but I would say that that's kind of where I was more controversial with what people were saying was sticking up for Batman v Superman and Suicide Squad a little bit.
Right. It's nothing like you're saying Star Wars is terrible or something like
No.
that. That would be a little more controversial, I think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you guys, would you mind, you got, every once in a while we do this
Okay.
on the show. Have you guys ever played SuperFight?
No.
No, I
Haven't
haven't.
heard of SuperFight?
No, I haven't.
Perfect. Let me grab it real fast. Okay, SuperFight. Basically, the white cards are characters
Okay.
and the black cards are attributes. Basically, you're going to have one white card and two black cards,
Okay.
and then you're going to fight each other by describing why you would beat the other one.
My person is Willy Wonka.
All right.
And do I need to?
Sure, go ahead.
He is armed with a poison-tipped lance and has a battleship.
Wow.
All right.
It's pretty random.
So my person is Rambo, and he has hands instead of feet. So he has 4 hands to shoot you with, and he's also driving a tank, which is going to be very awkward trying to drive a tank with no feet. But
So whenever I picked Willy Wonka, I'm going to be honest, I was going to go with more the mental aspect of how he screws with people.
and he's super creepy.
And he's super creepy. And then I drew my 2 black cards, and we're going more the physical route with the black cards. So I think I have a battle ahead of me.
Yeah, I think you picked wrong with Willy Wonka because I picked Rambo. And Rambo's awesome. Like I said, he has hands instead of feet.
Yeah.
So he has 4 hands to have guns, AKs in. So
But I mean, have you seen Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory?
I have. It's super
He kills
creepy.
a lot of kids in that movie.
He does kill a lot of kids, but are one of those kids Rambo?
No, but one's a fat kid, right? And big, like Rambo. And he also has a poison-tipped lance. So
Oh, yeah?
I don't know if you remember me saying that, but he also has and he has a battleship as well. So a battleship is bigger than a tank and beats a tank.
That is a good point, but I feel like that Chocolate River is not very big, so I don't think it's going to fit that battleship in there.
But what if he created a chocolate ocean and the battleship's in a chocolate ocean?
I've seen Rambo. I don't think he's going anywhere close to a chocolate ocean.
I mean, but Rambo's pushing 75 years old at this point, right? So,
Yeah.
or 70 years old or whatever he is. And I mean, depending on which Willy Wonka you want to go with, he's either dead or pretty young. So
Which one is better?
Willy Wonka.
No. I'm not.
Willy Wonka's better. I win.
No, you don't win. Because Rambo trumps everything.
That's not true. Are you saying that the Rambo movie, so from a movie perspective, which would you say is the better movie? The Willy Wonka movie from the 70s or any of the Rambo movies?
Rambo, the first one, First Blood.
No fucking way.
Yes.
Sorry if I can't curse.
There's no comparison between First Blood and the first Willy Wonka movie.
Yeah, there is. Willy Wonka is a classic. Rambo is...
First Blood? They drew First Blood?
I mean, in all fairness, Willy Wonka drew First Blood because that movie came out first, right? And he kills, again, children in it.
But you don't ever see him actually harm the children.
The kid gets stuck in a plastic tube and he's like suffocated.
Yeah, but that was his fault.
One of them blows up to a blueberry. Like, what you think?
Again,
you think she's walking away
fault.
from that? But he set those. He's basically like Jigsaw. He set those traps.
Wow.
He is kind of like Jigsaw.
That is pretty revealing there.
He does have a psychological angle to him.
Yeah, and that's what I'm trying to play here, man. Because I mean, hand-to-hand combat. I mean, yeah, Rambo, or hand-to-hand to hand-to-hand. Because he has 4 hands. But I mean, armed with a poison-tipped lance. Did you not see? So remember in Game of Thrones?
Yes.
Where Oberyn like poisons the mountain.
Yeah, but the mountain didn't have a tank.
Yeah, but Oberyn didn't have a battleship.
but who won that fight in Game of Thrones?
So, but the mountain basically died too. So
Yes.
Willy Wonka might die, but he's taking Rambo out with him because he's psychotic.
Interesting.
That's an interesting perspective.
Because, I mean, the mountain's technically alive now, but he's basically a Frankenstein. Like,
Yeah, he's a zombie for sure.
Yeah, so, I mean, he's not really real. He lost the fight just as much as Oberyn did. Kind of, I guess. Maybe not.
I think Willy Wonka would be Rambo.
Wow. He's already conceding.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Dang. All right.
What do you think? Just from an outside
I
perspective.
mean, I hate Willy Wonka, like the movie.
Really?
Like, I really hate that movie.
Did it, like,
No, I
mess
just
with
never
you as a
liked
kid,
it.
or?
I just never. I'm like, what? I don't get the big deal about this movie. And
Really?
like the whole Grandpa Joe thing is just messed up too.
Yeah, it's weird. It's
Talking
definitely
about
weird.
controversial opinions.
Yeah, and First Blood. That's like that's an amazing movie. So I really, I would not on the movie wise. I'm falling on the Rambo side.
I like First Blood, but I mean, all banter aside, I would say I like Willy Wonka better. The original.
Yeah, I probably. I mean, Rambo did end up creating Osama bin Laden in the third one. So we probably should.
I didn't get that far.
No praise to heap on Rambo there.
I mean, Pat has a dog named Rambo, so it was
do.
kind of written in the stars that you were going to pick him.
Well,
For
that's
sure.
amazing then that you
Yeah.
got that.
And what's really funny about that is he weighs about 12 pounds and he is a chug. He's half Chihuahua, half pug.
Oh, nice.
And it's hilarious that his name is Rambo.
That's awesome. Well, thank you guys for indulging me on that.
Yeah,
No, it was
that's
fun.
a fun game.
Coming up, any special shows or anything you want to plug, promote, or anything? Any
Let's see.
stuff you got going on?
Well, I mean, I don't know when this is going out, but the next thing we're doing is we're reviewing the Defenders. So chances are that when you're listening to this, our Defenders episode will be available.
Oh, that's right. It starts like tomorrow. Doesn't
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Pretty excited for it. Have we reviewed all of the Netflix Marvel shows? I don't think we did Jessica Jones.
We didn't formally do Jessica Jones, but I think it was what one of us was into. So we talked a lot about it.
So we started Iron Fist.
Ugh.
I saw one episode and I'm like, do I need to power through this to get to the Defenders, or can I just skip it and go? Yeah, I get it. I get the gist.
I don't see, without having seen the Defenders yet, I don't know that I can answer that question.
Yeah.
But Iron Fist is a tough watch.
Yeah.
It's
bad.
really bad.
Yeah.
We've talked about this before on the podcast. We get to do a lot of cool shit because of the podcast, but watching the first season of Iron Fist was not one of those
It's like a
things.
punishment.
Yeah, it felt like homework. Like we knew we were going to review it for the podcast, and I think we both said this on the episode.
Yeah.
We don't think we would have finished the first season if it hadn't been for the podcast.
Yeah. I don't know. I think that Iron Fist probably sets up the big bad for the Defenders, but you could probably
Just watch the last episode.
yeah, you could probably get past it and not watch that show.
Yeah. But the other shows,
Yeah.
totally on
Yeah.
board with.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
So good.
That's their one flaw was Iron Fist, but everything else was good.
It's their Batman versus Superman.
Except for that doesn't work because they're all bad.
Okay. Man, that's funny. Cool. Well, yeah. Well, I'll just at the beginning of that one, just say, hey, you do have to watch Iron Fist. Like, all right, I'll pause and go back and check.
Will do.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Well, thanks, guys. I appreciate you coming over. I know you guys, like I was telling Pat, I'm like, you guys answered that quickly. So
for sure.
I had to get in before you guys, before you take off. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, thanks for coming over, and I'm sad that it took us almost 4 years to to meet up. But
No,
sure.
Thanks for having us, man. It's been fun.
yeah.
For sure.
All right. Cool. Thanks.
Thanks.
Good job, everybody.